Your presence just causes trouble." Stephanie's words cut me like a blade. There I stood, frozen, on the doorstep of my own son's house. In my trembling hands, I clutched the little blue sweater I'd knitted for Owen, every stitch a quiet testament of love from my lonely nights. "Owen gets overstimulated after you leave. You bring sweets when we've asked you not to. You meddle in our parenting. We need our space." The silence that followed was deafening. I looked at Jason, my youngest, pleading for a reaction, a defense, any sign he was still my son. But he just stood there, head bowed, avoiding my eyes as if I were a stranger. Inside the house, through the slightly ajar door, I saw familiar faces, rigid with shock. My other kids, her parents, friends. All of them, frozen, spectators to my public humiliation. My breath caught, snagged in my throat. 67 years of life, 3 children raised alone after I was widowed. And now, this. To be treated like an intruder, an inconvenience, an unwanted guest. "So what am I?" was all I could manage, my voice barely a whisper. No one answered. I clutched the sweater to my chest and turned. Every step away from that house felt like a ton of bricks. I didn't shed a single tear until I was in the taxi. Only then, when the driver asked if I was okay, did the dam finally break. You must be wondering how we arrived at this point. How a devoted grandmother becomes persona non grata in her own son's home. The truth is, I didn't understand it either. Not at that moment, anyway. Everything began to shift, subtly, a few months ago. After 5 years of being the ever-present grandma, the one who made sure to be around, to help with her grandson, to keep the family connected. Jason was always my youngest, the most sensitive of the 3. When Arthur passed away from a sudden heart attack 20 years ago, Jason was only 18. He was the one who suffered most from his father's absence. I worked double shifts as a nurse to ensure my children had everything they needed. Sleepless nights, extra hours, all to see them educated and settled in life. When Jason introduced me to Stephanie 8 years ago, I admit I felt a wave of relief. She seemed so grounded, so caring. She had that practical way of getting things done, something my son, always more of a dreamer, truly needed by his side. At their wedding, I cried tears of joy, watching my youngest finally build his own nest. "Mrs. Miller, you're the mother I always wished I had," Stephanie told me once, in their early years of marriage. Her own mother, Susan, was a distant woman, more concerned with appearances than affection. I understood the emptiness Stephanie carried, and I tried to fill it with my love. When Owen was born 5 years ago, my world lit up again. That chubby baby with Arthur's eyes brought back a joy I thought I'd lost forever. I organized my retired life around him. Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays were Grandma's days, as we called them. "Mom, I don't know what we'd do without you," Jason would say, while I changed the little one's diaper so Stephanie could rest after delivery. For the first few years, everything was a dream. I'd arrive with my warm coffee cake, help with the baby, tell family stories so Owen would know his roots. Stephanie seemed genuinely grateful, always asking me for recipes, advice on baby colic, the first fevers. The first tremor of change came when Owen turned 4. One Thursday, I arrived as usual, but the house was empty. I called Jason, a knot of worry tightening in my stomach. "Mom, I forgot to tell you. Stephanie took Owen for a trial swimming lesson. Sorry." I drove home, a little annoyed by the oversight, but I understood. Life moves on, kids grow up, routines change. The following week, it happened again. This time, it was a pediatrician's appointment that popped up last minute. The excuses started piling up. My visits, once fixed, began to be rescheduled, cancelled. When I did manage to see my grandson, I noticed Stephanie always hovered, a shadow, monitoring our interactions, correcting my words as if I were a child. "Mrs. Miller, we've asked you not to give him sweets before lunch," she'd say, plucking the candy from Owen's hand while the boy looked at me, confused. Or, "Owen can't watch that cartoon. We have an approved list of educational shows." Jason, who used to defend me, started staying silent during these small corrections. Sometimes he'd even agree with his wife, as if I were committing grave errors in front of my grandson. One afternoon, while Owen was napping, I tried to talk to my son in the kitchen. "Jason, is everything okay? I feel like something's changed." He stirred his coffee nervously, refusing to meet my gaze. "Mom, Stephanie thinks you sometimes, well, that you interfere too much with Owen's upbringing." "Interfere? What do you mean?" "I just want to help, honey." "I know, Mom, but it's little things. The out-of-schedule sweets, the monster stories that scare him at night, the surprise gifts that mess up the reward system we've established." "A reward system?" My son sounded like he'd swallowed a parenting manual whole. Where was the boy who grew up running wild in the backyard, making up stories, eating cake straight from the pan? "Honey, I'm a grandma. Grandmas spoil a little. It's practically a job requirement." "Stephanie studied a lot about child development, Mom. She knows what she's doing." I left with a heavy heart. Something fundamental was changing, and I couldn't grasp what it was. Stephanie's messages, once warm and frequent, became formal, almost terse. "Can't visit today. Owen's schedule is packed. We're reorganizing our routine." My middle daughter, Diane, started noticing my sadness. "Mom, what's going on? You've been so down lately." I told her about the distancing, the canceled visits, Jason's strange behavior. Diane frowned, her brow furrowed in concern. "Something's not right about this. Jason's always been so close to you." It was Diane who told me, weeks later, that she'd run into a friend who went to the same gym as Stephanie. According to this friend, my daughter-in-law had been making comments about me for months. "My mother-in-law's impossible. She meddles in everything. She criticizes my house, says things were different back in her day. She fills Owen's head with nonsense, then I'm the one who deals with the tantrums. Lies. All lies. I never criticized their house. I never undermined Stephanie. I always tried to be the mother-in-law I would have wanted. The final blow came that Sunday. The Sunday of the blue sweater and the door slammed in my face. The Sunday I found out there was a celebration at my son's house. Susan's birthday, Stephanie's mother, and I, the only one, hadn't been invited. After that day, my phone went completely silent. Jason sent a few empty, non-committal texts. "Hope you're doing okay, Mom. We need some time for things to cool down. No visits, no Owen, no apologies." Diane took me in for a few days, worried about my emotional state. It was her who helped me realize something crucial. "Mom, do you still have all of Stephanie's old texts on your phone?" I did. I kept everything. Texts from 3-4 years ago. Stephanie asking for recipes, thanking me for watching Owen when she had to deal with work issues, praising my way with the baby, asking for advice on tantrums, sleep, feeding. "Barbara, I don't know what I'd do without you. Jason is so lucky to have a mom like you. My dear mother-in-law, Owen asked about you all day. When are you coming to visit? Thanks for Sunday lunch. You really make us feel like family. Evidence. Concrete proof of a relationship that completely contradicted the narrative she was now spreading. That's gaslighting, Mom, Diane explained, using a term I didn't know. She's twisting reality, making Jason believe a version that doesn't exist. My heart ached, not just for me, but for my son, for Owen. What kind of manipulation was happening in that house? What lies were being planted in my grandson's head about his grandmother? Not for revenge, but out of a desperate need to restore the truth, I agreed to Diane's plan. She and my oldest son, Richard, would organize a family lunch. Just the 4 of us, me, my 3 children. No spouses. A get-together to catch up, as Richard put it when he invited Jason. To my surprise, he accepted. Maybe he also missed the days when it was just us, a family united by Arthur's early absence, fighting through difficulties together. The lunch was on a Saturday afternoon, at Richard's apartment. I made the lasagna my kids loved so much. When Jason arrived, he looked nervous, uncomfortable. He gave me a brief, awkward hug. We ate in silence for the first few minutes, until Diane, always the most direct of the 3, placed her phone on the table. Jason, we need to talk about what's going on. My youngest stiffened, his expression shutting down. If this is just to talk bad about Stephanie, I didn't come for that. It's not about talking bad, Richard interjected, his voice steady. It's about understanding the truth. That's when Diane showed him the texts. Years of communication between Stephanie and me. Requests for help, heartfelt thank yous, declarations of affection. The building of a relationship that, by her own words, was based on respect and admiration. Jason's face went pale as he read message after message. His expression transformed, from defensiveness to confusion, from confusion to palpable pain. Mom, I don't know what to say, he finally murmured, his voice thick with emotion. Don't say anything, I replied, reaching across the table to take his hands. Just listen. I'm not here to break up your marriage or to make you choose between us. I'm here because I deserve respect, and because your son deserves to know the grandmother who loves him. Tears streamed down Jason's face. The sensitive boy he'd always been was right there, just behind the confused man he'd become. She's been telling me for months that you criticized how we raise Owen, that you complained about our house, that you talked about her behind her back. And you believed that? Knowing your mother like you do? Jason lowered his eyes, shame coloring his cheeks. She was so convincing, and when you hear something over and over, you start to believe it. I finished for him. I know, honey. I'm not here to judge you. I just want to understand why. That afternoon, amidst tears and revelations, Jason admitted that Stephanie had been systematically pushing me away. First with little lies, then by creating conflict, until she finally convinced him I was a toxic presence in their lives. She says she learned it from her own mom, Jason explained, his voice hollow. That mothers-in-law just get in the way. That we need to protect our nuclear family. And since when am I not family? I asked, feeling my heart clench. Jason had no answer for that. By the end of that lunch, my son hugged me like he hadn't in months. A long, tight embrace, heavy with regret. I'll fix this, Mom. I promise. 3 months passed since that day. Jason started couples therapy with Stephanie. He now visits me weekly, bringing Owen. The first few visits were tense. My grandson seemed confused to see me, as if he was trying to remember who I was. It broke my heart into 1,000 pieces, But children have an incredible capacity for reconnection. By the third visit, Owen was already running into my arms as soon as he saw me. "Grandma Pat, did you bring coffee cake?" The wounds are still healing, and I don't know if Stephanie and I will ever have the relationship we had at the beginning. On the few occasions we've met, she maintains a cold, distant cordiality. Jason told me she feels betrayed by the exposure of the messages, that she considers it an invasion of privacy. Maybe it is, but I learned that, even at 67, we need to set clear boundaries and defend our truth, not out of pride or revenge, but out of dignity. The presence that only caused problems is now recognized for the value it always had. And as I knit a new sweater for Owen, this one, green like his eyes, I think about how the truth, even painful, even late, has the power to heal wounds that lies caused. But what happened next was even worse. That night, after returning home from the revealing lunch with my children, I received a call from Jason. His voice was trembling, almost unrecognizable. "Mom, I showed Stephanie the messages." My heart pounded. That wasn't what I expected him to do, at least not so quickly, not without preparation. "And how did she react, honey?" The silence on the other end of the line told me everything before he even spoke the words. She said she's leaving, that she's taking Owen to her parents' house until she decides what to do. I felt the ground disappear beneath my feet. I never wanted to cause a separation, never wanted my grandson to go through the trauma of seeing his parents drift apart. Guilt washed over me like a tidal wave. "Jason, I'm so sorry. That wasn't my intention." "It's not your fault, Mom," he interrupted, his voice firmer now, steadier. "Stephanie needs to face the truth. I need to, too. I spent months believing lies about the person who's loved me most, my whole life. When I hung up, I stayed awake for hours, tossing and turning in bed. What had I done? Had my need to clear my name destroyed my son's family? The next morning, the doorbell rang early. When I opened the door, I found Stephanie standing there, alone, her eyes red-rimmed from a night of crying. My entire body froze. "Can I come in, Pat?" she asked, her voice low, almost a whisper. I stepped aside, letting her in. She sat on the living room couch, her hands restless in her lap. I offered her coffee, which she refused with a slight shake of her head. "Jason showed me the messages," she began, looking at the floor. "All of them." I remained silent, waiting. What could I say? I don't recognize myself in those words," she continued, her voice catching. "It's like they were written by someone else, a better person than I became." That's when I realized Stephanie wasn't there to accuse me, or to fight. She was there, broken and raw, reaching for understanding. "What happened, Stephanie? What changed between us?" She took a deep breath, finally finding the courage to look me in the eyes. "My mom started making comments, small ones at first. Doesn't your mother-in-law think you're spoiling that boy too much? Doesn't it bother you how she rearranges your things when she visits? Did you notice how Jason always takes his mother's side?" Stephanie ran a hand over her face, wiping away a tear. "And then, at Owen's school moms meetings, I'd hear horrible stories about controlling mothers-in-law, about how they destroyed marriages. I started seeing signs where none existed, to interpret your actions in the worst possible way. I remembered Susan, Stephanie's distant mother, always so critical, so concerned with appearances. I began to understand the twisted puzzle that was forming. Why didn't you talk to me about it?" Because I was ashamed. Because deep down I knew I was wrong. Because it was easier to create this villainous version of you than to admit my own fears and insecurities. At that moment, a flashback hit me hard. It was a summer afternoon, 2 years ago. Owen had just turned 3. "Pat, can I ask you something?" Stephanie called to me as I folded Owen's freshly washed clothes. "Of course, dear. Do you think I'm a good mom?" The question caught me by surprise. I stopped what I was doing and looked at her. Stephanie seemed vulnerable, almost fragile. "Why are you asking me that?" "It's just, sometimes I feel like I don't know what I'm doing. Owen had a fever last week and I panicked. You always seem to know what to do, how to calm him down. I'm afraid I'm not enough." I sat beside her, taking her hands in mine. "Stephanie, you are a wonderful mother. Different from me, but no less capable. I had 3 children, decades of experience. It's normal to feel insecure sometimes." She smiled, looking relieved. "My mom says I spoil Owen too much, that I need to be firmer. Every mother finds her own way. The important thing is love, and I know Owen has plenty of that." That afternoon, I thought we had grown even closer. Little did I know that insecurity, fueled by outside comments, would turn into something so destructive. Back in the present, I looked at Stephanie sitting on my couch, seeming smaller and younger than her 36 years. "What do you want now, Stephanie?" "I don't know," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "Jason is devastated. He feels betrayed, manipulated. He said he doesn't recognize me anymore." "And you? Do you recognize yourself?" She shook her head, tears now flowing freely. "I came here because I need to understand how I let this happen, how I allowed my fears to poison something as beautiful as our family." At that moment, something shifted inside me. The resentment I carried began to give way to a deeper understanding. Stephanie wasn't a calculating villain. She was an insecure woman, pressured by expectations, trying to protect her small nuclear family in the only way she knew how. "Where's Owen?" I asked. "With Jason. I thought it was better to come alone." I got up and went to the kitchen. I came back with 2 cups of tea, the steam rising gently. I offered one to her, which she accepted with trembling hands. "Stephanie, what happened between us is painful, but not irreparable. Families are complicated. Relational bonds require constant work. Do you think Jason will forgive me? My son loves you, but trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild." We sat in silence for a few minutes, sipping our tea. Then I remembered another moment, one that perhaps helped explain how we'd arrived at this fractured place. It was Owen's first birthday. The house was decorated with blue and yellow balloons, a teddy bear-shaped cake on the center table. Stephanie rushed around, a whirlwind of nervous energy, checking the last details. "Pat, do you think everything's perfect?" she asked, adjusting the flower arrangement for the 10th time. "It's beautiful, dear. Owen will adore it." "My mom said the theme is too childish, that I should have chosen something more sophisticated." I chuckled lightly. "It's his first birthday. Of course it's childish. He's a baby." Stephanie didn't seem convinced. "She always does this. Nothing I do is ever good enough." I put my hand on her shoulder. "Don't worry about what your mom thinks. The important thing is that Owen has a happy day, surrounded by love." When Susan arrived hours later, her first comment was about the excessively colorful decorations. I watched Stephanie's face fall, all her confidence disappearing in seconds. During the party, I made sure to praise every detail Stephanie had planned, trying to counterbalance Susan's sharp comments. At the end of the day, when most of the guests had left, I found Stephanie crying quietly in Owen's room. "What's wrong, dear?" Nothing went right. The cake was too sweet, the decorations too childish. Owen cried during "Happy Birthday." "Stephanie, it was a wonderful party. Owen had so much fun, got messy with his cake, opened all his presents, felt loved by everyone. That's what really matters." She hugged me tight that day, like a daughter would hug a mother. "Thanks for always being here, Deborah." That flashback made me realize something crucial. Stephanie's insecurity didn't begin with me. It began long before, rooted in her relationship with her own mother. Unknowingly, I had become a mirror reflecting all her inadequacies, all her fears of not being enough. "Stephanie," I began, placing my cup on the table. "I think I understand better now what happened." I told her about my realization, about how her relationship with Susan had shaped her fears, how I'd unintentionally become a threat to her authority as a mom. I'm not saying this to let you off the hook or to play the victim. I'm saying it because I think we need to understand the roots of the problem to fix it. She nodded, wiping away fresh tears. I always wanted to be different from my mom. More present, more loving. And somehow I ended up repeating patterns I swore I'd never follow. It's not too late to change, Stephanie. For either of us. When she stood to leave, she seemed lighter, as if a great weight had been lifted from her shoulders. At the door, she hesitated. "Deborah, I know I don't have the right to ask this, but would you consider coming over for dinner tomorrow? Jason and Owen would really miss your presence." My heart just warmed. Of course I will. In the weeks that followed, Jason and Stephanie started couples therapy. It wasn't easy. There were arguments, tears, moments when both questioned if they could overcome the broken trust. But there was also love, and a genuine desire to rebuild what had been damaged. Owen, oblivious to the grown-up drama, was simply thrilled to have his grandma back. During my visits, now less frequent but more meaningful, he'd run into my arms with the pure joy only children possess. "Grandma, tell me the story about Grandpa Arthur catching the giant fish." And I would tell it, while Stephanie, sitting on the couch nearby, listened with a new kind of attention. No longer defensive, no longer looking for flaws, but genuinely interested in the family stories that were now also part of her son's history. One day, about 2 months after our revealing conversation, Stephanie asked me to stay after Jason had put Owen to bed. "I have something to show you," she said, bringing out an old shoebox. Inside were dozens of drawings Owen had made over the years. In many of them, a figure with gray hair appeared, always smiling, always holding hands with a little boy. He made these during the months when I kept you away. He always asked about you. I'd say you were busy, that you'd visit soon. I leafed through the drawings, my heart aching. In one of them, Owen had written in his childish handwriting, "Grandma Deborah and me baking." "He never forgot you," Stephanie continued, "even when I tried. Even when I—" "We don't need to rehash it," I interrupted gently. "The important thing is we're here now, trying to rebuild." That's when she handed me an envelope. Inside was a handmade card, decorated with glitter and colorful stickers. Clearly Owen's work, with an adult's help. "It's an invitation," Stephanie explained, "for Owen's 6th birthday next month. He insisted on giving you yours first." I opened the card, touched. Inside, beyond the party details, was a message written in Stephanie's hand. To the best grandma in the world, our family wouldn't be complete without you. Love, Owen, Jason, and Stephanie. 3 more months passed. Jason now visits me weekly, bringing Owen. Sometimes Stephanie comes along. Other times she doesn't. We're all learning to respect boundaries, to communicate expectations, to establish healthy limits. On the last visit, Owen asked me as we put together a puzzle. "Grandma, why were you gone for so long?" I looked at Stephanie, who was in the kitchen preparing a snack. Our eyes met, a silent communication passing between us. "Sometimes, Owen," I answered carefully. "Grown-ups get confused and make mistakes. But the important thing is, when we realize our mistakes, we do our best to fix them." Like when I broke Mom's vase and then said I was sorry. I smiled. Exactly like that. Stephanie came closer, sitting with us on the living room rug. "And sometimes," she added, placing a puzzle piece, "we need help to see that we're wrong. That's what happened to me, Owen. I wasn't letting Grandma Deborah visit you like I should have, and that was wrong of me." Owen looked at his mom, then at me, processing the information with the surprising wisdom children sometimes show. "But now everything's okay, right? We're a family again?" "Yes, my love," Stephanie replied, looking at me with misty eyes. "We're a family. We always were. The wounds are still healing, and I don't know if Stephanie and I will ever have exactly the relationship we had at the beginning. But we're building something new, something perhaps stronger because it was tested, broken, and carefully reconstructed. Jason started individual therapy, in addition to couples therapy. He recently told me he's learning to set boundaries with both Stephanie and me, to be the bridge between the women he loves, without losing himself in the process. As for me, I learned that even at 67, I still have much to learn about relationships, about forgiveness, about the complexity of modern families. I learned that the truth, no matter how painful it is initially, is always the path to genuine healing. At Owen's birthday last month, I was welcomed not as a guest, but as an essential part of the celebration. I helped decorate the cake, organize the games, took pictures. Susan was there too, still distant, still critical, but something had shifted in the dynamic. Stephanie didn't shrink under her comments anymore, didn't desperately seek her approval. "I've learned from the best," she told me quietly, when Susan criticized the amount of sweets on the table. To ignore what doesn't help and value what does. Yesterday, I got a call from Jason. "Mom, we're thinking of spending Christmas at your place this year. What do you think?" I smiled, feeling a renewed hope bloom in my chest. "I'd love that, son. I'll make that stuffed turkey you all love so much." Stephanie wants to know if she can help with dessert. "Of course. We can make that caramel flan together. My mom's recipe I promised to teach her." When I hung up, I stood looking at Arthur's photo on the small table next to my favorite armchair. "See, old man? In the end, the truth always finds its way." The presence that only caused problems was now recognized for the value it always held. Not through revenge or confrontation, but by the simple, powerful force of truth that came to light. And as I prepare a new little sweater for Owen, this one, red for the approaching Christmas, I understand that families, like the stitches in my knitting, can unravel, but they can also be rebuilt, stitch by stitch, with patience, love, and above all, honesty. The journey isn't over. It probably never will be. But now we walk together, eyes open, heart sincere, building a story that Owen will one day tell with pride. The story of how his family almost lost its way, but found it back through truth.